I saw this last night and I thought it was fake news. I thought that it was a joke that the governor of Arizona literally vetoed a bill that would restrict Chinese nationals from buying land in Arizona nearby a military base or installation. I couldn't believe it. Now I'm not really sure if the legislature there has the ability to override her, but I'm not sure I get it. She made some claim about, oh, this isn't really a problem. That's why we shouldn't worry about it. Well, District 2 Republican, great state of Arizona, is Eli Crane. Representative, good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
When you saw that, it had to make you completely crazy like it did me. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I'm not surprised, Joe, as somebody who's from that state. I mean, whether we're talking about the border, election integrity, or this issue, you can almost count on Governor Hobbs to be wrong about just about everything, which is why just this last weekend, I was with many other elected officials supporting my good friend and colleague, Andy Biggs, for governor, because we definitely need change in Arizona.
Well, I'm confused about what her excuse was, and the people of Arizona can't be happy about this. We shouldn't have anybody from an antagonistic country. Maybe we shouldn't have anybody from any country outside of our own that's buying land close by a military installation or a base. We had the stupid spy balloon fly across the entire country, did nothing about it till it was over the Atlantic Ocean once all the information was sent back. Eli, is there some faction of government on state level, on county level, on national level that somehow is appeasing China for a reason?
Well, sometimes it's hard to tell, Joe, whether you're talking about the state or the federal level, whether it's, complete incompetence to what's going on with that specific issue, or whether they're in bed with them. But I mean, it just blows my mind that, a lot of folks in this country don't understand what the Chinese Communist Party is trying to do by taking the United States down with unrestricted warfare. And that basically means they're trying to destroy us without firing a shot. And they do that with fentanyl. They do that by buying up our farmland. They do that with espionage. They do that by getting their students into our universities to steal intellectual property, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And, it's just very disturbing to see that a lot of elected officials and even some Americans don't understand, what's going on there.
Is there anything you can do on a congressional level to say, hey, no, you can't buy this land near an installation? Or because it's Arizona land, Katie Hobbs or the governor of any state is the one that has the say?
Yeah, I think that would be more of a state issue. I'm big on limited government, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see maybe an executive order from the president on something that has national security implications. And honestly, Joe, I'm very leery to think that this Congress up here is going to do much of anything, that's good for the American people, based on how impotent I've seen this Congress be, and lacking any codifying into law any of President Trump's executive orders, and on and on. I know you cover this on a daily basis, so I know
Yes.
you're not surprised.
Well, I don't understand. We had Tim Burchett yesterday, came out, good friend of both of ours, and he said, codify, let's start, let's go. He's been doing these executive orders. There are 3 specific executive orders he wants codified into law. You guys have I know it's a slim margin, but you've got the majority in both the House and the Senate. You guys have the president. You seem to have the Supreme Court. I'm not so sure, though, with Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts. But why not just do everything, throw everything against the wall? Because you know damn well, if Nancy Pelosi were the speaker right now, and if Chuck Schumer were the leader in the Senate, and you had Biden or the autopen in office, you'd be codifying everything. Why not do that? What's the holdup?
Well, you're preaching to the choir, Joe. The fact of the matter is that it's partly the fault of members of Congress and representatives up here who don't want to codify President Trump's agenda. But honestly, we got to put some blame on the American people that continually send these people up to Washington, that just want to manage the decline of this country and don't want to change anything and take the political hit for it. And so it's a combination of both. I know the American people are busy. I know they've got busy lives. They're taking care of their kids, running their families. But this is what happens when the American people don't pay attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C. You get politicians that are able to come up here, not do anything for their benefit, not change anything, and then go home and gaslight in their districts.
He's on the Oversight Committee, Homeland Security, also Freedom Caucus, former Navy SEAL. Do you say former Navy SEAL, or are you always a Navy SEAL?
We say former Navy SEAL, Joe. I think
Okay.
only the Marines say that they're once a Marine, always a Marine, and God bless them for it.
It is. It's Eli Crane, District 2 Republican, great state of Arizona. Go and follow him now, crane.house.gov. Follow him on all the social media, too. Just had Rand Paul on a little while ago, and he's got a bit of a problem with $1 trillion for military. He's not really sure why. We've already got a military that's 4 times, or he says 10 times bigger than any other military financially. Why are we adding so much in the big, beautiful bill? Are we overspending on military? Is there a real need to spend $1 trillion?
I believe we are, Joe. I believe we are overspending on the military. I believe we're overspending across the board, and that's coming from somebody, who was in the service, somebody who has a bunch of friends still running around the world in very dangerous places. And I want to see my buddies have the best gear in the world, but I also don't want to see never-ending wars, and I don't want to see, the United States basically subsidize world peace. We can't afford it. The Pentagon hasn't passed an audit in, like 20 years. There's a bunch of fraud, waste, and abuse. And that was something that I asked Secretary Hegseth weeks ago when I was at the Pentagon. Why haven't we seen a bunch of Doge cuts proposed at the Pentagon? And, so it is a real concern for many of ours. I think the American people want to have a very strong military, but at the same time, I don't know that they support us being spread out all over hell's half acre with bases all over the world, tens of thousands of troops all over the world. And I think they want us to focus on, making sure we have robust defense, but, on making sure that we're prioritizing America and our interests before anyone else's.
It just seems like pulling the money back is the hardest thing. You had an increase for the pandemic of $2 trillion a year in spending. We never pulled it back. It's as if the pandemic's still going on. And now we're going to be adding to it. Look, I like a lot about the one big, beautiful bill. I do. I know that you voted for it. I know that most Republicans did. I think a couple have sat out or something. But at the end of the day, it's not perfect yet. And there isn't any decrease in spending anytime soon. It takes a while. And even the work requirement for Medicaid takes a while as well. Can't we do something now? I mean, it's like you guys in Congress pressed the button, not you specifically, and said, here's more money for the pandemic. The pandemic ended 2 or 3 years ago. Why can't we take that money back?
Yeah, Joe, I'm with you, man. And I'm pretty frustrated with the entire process myself. That was a very tough bill for me to vote for. Obviously, it had some, you mentioned it a second ago. There are many things in it that you like about it. There are many things that I like, including the tax cuts, the funding, for Tom Homan to secure the border. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good things in there. But when it came to spending, I think we fell really short. And what I can tell you, Joe, is when the Republicans went down to Florida back in, I believe it was January or February early this year, they came back and their plan was to cut $30 billion over the next 10 years. $30 billion, Joe. And so the House Freedom Caucus and other conservatives, we moved to push that bill as far to the right as we could, and we got the Florida $1.5 trillion. Still not even close to enough because, again, that's over 10 years. So you're talking about $150, $200 billion annually when we're running $2 trillion deficits. But, when we have the weak members up here, the moderates up here that don't want to touch anything, who just want to manage the decline of this country, and they definitely outnumber us, Joe. Sometimes that's the best we can do. We can make it less crummy. And I mean, Joe, you had 20 guys. You had 20 members.
Less crummy. I've never heard it explained that way. But you're exactly right.
I'm trying to censor myself. I think you might have some kids watching the show.
Yes.
As an old sailor, but I mean, you had 20 Republicans sign a letter saying that they didn't want to get rid of any of the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. You had factions of the Republican conference who the only thing they cared about was SALT and whether or not they could get SALT tax decreases for their constituents and their donors. And so we're dealing with all these factions that aren't looking at the big picture. They don't really care about the debt. They don't really care about spending. They think that this this utopia is going to continue going on. And I have bad news. It's not. It's eventually going to collapse, and it's going to collapse because of our own stupidity and arrogance.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's U.S. Representative Eli Crane, District 2 Republican, great state of Arizona, also former Navy SEAL. He's on a bunch of committees. The SALT thing, I want to talk about that for a second because, screw them. And this is why I say that. And I can say that even with the kids watching and listening. If you've got leadership in your state, in California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, all these high-tax states, and they're screwing you on your state taxes because SALT stands for state and local tax, Why would I want to subsidize that? I'm not going to subsidize your bad decisions at the ballot box. If you want somebody different in there that's going to charge you less taxes, get somebody different in there. Why did we ever decide that we would somehow offset the high taxes by ridiculous progressive governors in these states and not force the voters of the state to make a better decision?
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. I mean, it was one of the most frustrating parts of the big, beautiful bill process. And honestly, I think it came down to a political calculus and understanding that, we have a slim majority in Congress and we needed their votes, and they drew a line in the sand saying, we're not voting for this unless you give us what we want. And so, that's how it ended up. And it's really unfortunate because, it didn't help, the out of control fiscal spending in Washington. It didn't help the deficit picture whatsoever. And, many Americans are going to subsidize something that, they shouldn't be subsidizing. And quite frankly, they're not benefiting from as well.
It is Eli Crane, District 2 Republican, great state of Arizona. Go and follow him on all social media. It's crane.house.gov. Let's talk about Arizona and the immigration issue in the border. Here in Texas, where I am, we closed the border even while Biden was in office, and that forced a lot of people to go to Arizona and come in illegally there. You've got a governor who's, I think, a lunatic. That's my word, not yours. And she doesn't want to close the border. In fact, she wants more people to come in. But the feds are doing the job that they should have been doing the entirety. We had autopen as the president. This president isn't taking any guff. So what's happening in Arizona? Because I know that the government there, the state government there, is not going to be helpful. But the feds, I think, are able to go in there and do what they have to do, right?
Yeah, they are. And that's one of the things that I mentioned in the big, beautiful bill that, Congress is actually, the Republican Congress is pretty united on, and making sure that not only is border security a priority, we have a lot of money in there to finish the border wall, train new agents, new technologies, et cetera, and then help with deportations. And so, many of our elected officials, unfortunately, in Arizona have been fighting tooth and nail what the Trump administration has been doing. But nevertheless, ICE, the Border Patrol continues to try and do the job that, the American people expect them to do, to put them first, put their safety first, and put their families first.
So, the border crossings in Arizona, I'm assuming, are down as much as they are here in Texas. And I'm guessing they're down in California as well, even though, again, those state governors are ridiculous. What kind of pushback are you getting in the state? Are there your constituents saying, hey, psst, Eli, we can't do this purple crap anymore. We got to be red now. We can't be blue anymore. We got it. We put Katie Hobbs in. We got to put this ridiculous AG in. We got it. We need to do better next time. Is there an uprising in Arizona saying we see how well it works when we have a guy like Eli Crane or an administration like Trump? Are they ready to go back red? Is it always going to be purple? Why is it purple anyway? To begin with, it doesn't make any sense. I've been to Arizona. It's a beautiful state, smart people. Why did it ever go purple?
Yeah, well, a lot of people have asked that same question, Joe. And honestly, if you look at the numbers, I know there's a bunch of organizations like Turning Point USA that have done a great job in helping, reverse those numbers. Matter of fact, the delta in Republican to Democrat voters in Arizona is now well over 300,000. So we're not a purple state. We're a red state. I think one of the reasons that we have, a Democrat governor, 2 Democrat senators, are because a lot of money flows, from outside the state into these races. And I also think our elections have been a disaster for a very long time. And going back to Katie Hobbs, she continues to veto any election integrity bills at all. And so I think there's a couple reasons why you see some of our highest ranking elected official positions being held by Democrats. But I'm hoping, we can turn that around with those numbers, the registered Republicans that I was talking about.
It's Representative Eli Crane. Always appreciate the time and the access. When it comes to funding PBS and NPR, please tell me that's over. Is that done? I mean, it's got to be done. The answers they were giving, even in the congressional hearings, absolutely ridiculous. Didn't make any sense. And if they want to do what I do, I don't have any federal funding, and I've got to live and breathe and get advertising dollars. If they're so good, if they're worthy, why can't they compete with me on a fair level playing field? They get an advantage of getting my money to compete with me, which makes no sense. And the information is completely and absolutely biased. Is that funding done, do you think?
So right now, Joe, that the White House just sent over a rescissions package to Congress. I think it's pretty meager, $8 billion, but it has funding for USAID in there, PBS. And so it's kind of, from what I hear, the strategy is it's a test balloon to see if Congress can actually pass any of these rescissions that the American people would love to see get done. And so we're going to see if we can get that through. I'm hoping we can get that through because you made a lot of valid points there. And I know the American people have understood for a long time, hey, why are we funding, this propaganda machine of the left? It's ridiculous. I know your viewers are well educated on USAID,
Yeah.
and what that organization has been doing. And so this is kind of a trial balloon to see if Congress has any backbone whatsoever to actually execute the president's agenda that the American people elected him to do.
I want to make sure that I get the terminology right for those watching and listening. Reconciliation is a senatorial process where you only need 51 votes or 50 plus the vice president to pass something that is not major policy change. You could change funding, you make some policy moves here and there, but it's not a major new piece of legislation. That's why the big beautiful bill can pass with 50 plus JD Vance. On rescission, so you're saying the executive literally sends to Congress, we want this money taken back. We don't want them to get this money. It's almost like impoundment, but it's something different than impoundment because it's called rescission. Is it specifically that the president says, we don't want you to send this money out anymore? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, so this is one way for the president to execute his agenda is through a rescissions package. I know that the administration is also looking at impoundments and even pocket rescissions later in the year, which you have to do in the last 45 days. So they have multiple tools to execute the agenda. And like I said, this is kind of a trial run to see if Congress has any backbone whatsoever. And if we fail here, I think you'll see the administration use, some of the other tools that I just mentioned, to cut some of this fraud, waste, and abuse from the federal government.
It is Representative Eli Craner. Appreciate the time and the access. Lincoln was killed 150 years ago. Gerald Ford, there was an assassination attempt. There was an assassination of JFK. That was before I was even born, before you were born. We're still talking about it. The assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, we still talk about it. We're making movies about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that somebody tried to off the former president, then candidate Donald Trump. It's like we forgot about it. What's going on with that?
Well, Joe, I mean, another thing to add to the list of frustrations up here in Washington, D.C., there are some of us that are still talking about it, not only, on podcasts and media like this, but even behind the scenes to individuals within the administration that might help us get more answers, not only for, transparency's sake, but even accountability's sake. So there are some of us that are still working, on these issues. But, as you can imagine, there's a lot of folks within many of our agencies that are doing everything in their power, not only to stonewall the Trump administration, but to stonewall Congress from, getting some of this transparency and information that we need.
But do you guys do it in oversight? Does DOJ do it? Is it a combination of both? We got the right people running the DOJ. We've got the right side that is controlling Congress. Is it the deep state, those that are the tentacles beneath, who I just mentioned, that are holding this up? I guess I don't get it. Some pimple-faced 22-year-old kid didn't do this. I mean, I know that he was the guy that had the gun. I know that he was the guy that pulled the trigger. There's got to be something else going on here. And we don't want to think about conspiracies. It should be easy to figure out what the hell went down.
Yeah, I mean, this has been an issue that, I've been looking into, for quite a while. I went to Butler twice myself, once with the Homeland Security Committee, once with my colleague Corey Mills, somebody who also spent time in the Special Operations community. Yes. Take a look at the situation, take a look at the actual ground, the angles, the distances, et cetera, just to try and get a better, feel on the ground of what actually went down and how that conflicted with the stories that we were being told from the media. And so it is a frustrating thing, Joe, and I'm hoping with some of the people that we have in Congress that continue to look into it, but even more importantly, some of the people that have been appointed at the DOJ and other key positions within the administration, that some transparency and accountability is, coming down the pipe. Because like you, Joe, I had a really tough time believing that, a kid that young was able to get that close to the president with an AR-15. The guy flew a drone. He had explosives. It's just hard for me to believe that he was able to get that close, let alone get multiple shots off on the president. And so I still have a lot of questions about that myself, but we do have some folks in key positions that are working with us to try and get some answers.
What jumps out at me is that Jill Biden's friend was running the Secret Service at the time, and I'm not suggesting that the Bidens had anything to do with it, but it jumps out at me that when she was testifying in front of you guys, What she said about that roof being so sloped, I've got AR-15s. I've got guns. I'm 240 pounds. That roof was not too sloped for me to be up there. But what is she talking about? They decided not to check the roof because it was too sloped. I mean, Eli, you're a guy. You're a Navy SEAL, for God's sakes. That was just dumb what she said, wasn't it? Now, was she just incompetent, or was she trying to cover it up, possibly? I don't want to get you into the weeds here on this, but just that testimony alone hasn't been talked about in almost a year, and what she said didn't make any sense to anybody. A brand new shooter would know that isn't too sloped of a roof. It was almost flat.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Joe. And when I went to visit with the Homeland Security Committee, there was a 80-year-old man, colleague of mine, that went up on the roof right after me, and he walked right up it. It definitely wasn't too sloped, and it leads to some of the other questions that I had. As somebody who was a sniper in the SEAL teams, why wasn't any of the Secret Service snipers or affiliate snipers or shooter teams there? Why weren't any of them up on the water tower?
Right.
That's the number one place that I would have gone. It had the best field of view, definitely the highest structure. Not only did it give those guys the best field of view to take out any threats, but it also offers major deterrence, Joe. A lot of these guys that want to come into, a situation or an arena or, a parade ground like that, one of the things that they want to do is they want to make sure that they actually get a shot to actually execute, whatever plan, or whoever they're going after. And if they see snipers up in a tower like that, they know that their chances of actually getting a shot off aren't going to be very good at all. And so that's what we call deterrence. And
Yeah.
you call that deterrence in law enforcement, the military. Just, it really, sidetracks people from trying to do something like that. And so that was one of my big questions. I still haven't got answers to why nobody was up on the water tower, but it's one of the many questions that are left answered.
I love that you're on it. I love that you're out there working hard for Arizona. I love that you're working hard for this country. It's Representative Eli Crane, District 2 Republican, great state of Arizona. Eli, thanks a million for coming back on. Let's do it again soon, okay?
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, Joe.
Appreciate you. We're back after this. Stay right here.